Jaime, it's all you, my friend.
Thank you very much, Chris. All right. Well, I was gonna begin with, that is a hard act to follow. That was probably one of the best life updates I've heard in a while, and it made my heart smile. So I know, Ariel, welcome and best of luck to you, man. So for those of you, I know some, but not everybody. And this couldn't be a more adequate topic to discuss today. So my name is Jaime Salas. I am the recently appointed head of advocacy on the agave portfolio for Proximo Spirits. And I am particularly excited to be here leading this charge because, well, we're about to start addressing the trade. And if you know me, that is a passion point of mine. So we at Cuervo believe there are no strangers. So we are particularly excited to talk about not only what we're doing in the, as a company with the trade, with bartenders alike, but also more importantly, what we're doing in the tequila industry as a whole. We're excited to be, engaging and exchanging ideas, hearing more about what's important to you. If you know me, I'm very passionate about not only tequila, but sustainability, clearly, the industry as a whole. And I personally can't wait to get back out there and see all of you in person and all the people I'm sure we have in common. This is a beautiful industry that has a, point of connectivity of like 0.5, right? Like we all know somebody and we're all very connected. So I personally love the fact that there are no strangers given the context and given what we've all been through in the last year and a half. So there's no better reunion than an annual Tales reunion. I hope to be able to do that in person soon. So with that in mind, again, I mentioned the subject matter. I've been a career ambassador now for about 20 years. Just to segue into give you some context a little bit about me and my background. I started out with the ladies and I were talking before this. I started out with Don Julio with Diageo back in the day. I have a career spanning about almost 20 years now. I went on then to work with Beam and El Tesoro, and then I did a very short 12-year stint, almost 12-year stint with Milagro at William Grant & Sons before taking on this position over at Proximo. So there is life after bartending. It's all in what you make it. And you can clearly have a career at it. I'm sitting here telling you that that's the case. So if that's of interest to you guys, this is probably the best place to be right here, right now. So I'm going to hand it over to these lovely ladies to talk to you a little bit more about their journey and how they got from bartending over to the ambassador side. So we're going to have AK Hada lead the charge along with Cris Dehlavi. I hope I still said that correctly.
You
did. I wish you guys a great time together. Salud and cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jaime.
We're so excited to see everybody's faces. And for those of you who are not on camera, I want to see your faces. So please come off so I can see your faces, but I'm excited to at least see the names. If you were a cap, you definitely know who I am. I was a cap from 2010 on, and I led the charge for many, many years, and AK has for the last few years as well. And, it's just a crazy time. Like I was just saying to Alex, like I've been going to New Orleans from 2010 all the way through. And so to not be there last year or this year has been just a huge, change in my life. But things have been really good. And we're excited to kind of talk to you guys about like where we have gone from our typical nights behind the bar to where we are right now.
Absolutely. So yeah, if you were a cap, you also probably know who I am. My name is AK. I normally live in New York, so I'm visiting in Portland, Oregon right now. I was in the cap program from 2015 on. So not as many years as Cris, but when I was a red coat, I looked up to Cris and TK and John and Leo and the whole gang and Don. And so I feel very fortunate for that time and that experience and to meet all of you. So I guess the topic of this conversation is Cris and I were both bartenders for a long time. Both of us, I think, are unique in that we also, I don't think either of us were really looking to be a brand ambassador. But over this last year, both of us landed brand ambassador jobs. And, I really have to say what what a rewarding and very unexpected opportunity it's been. And so, you know, I think we're gonna give some first impressions, because obviously we haven't been in the trade as long as Jaime has, for 20 years. But I think especially as the industry is kind of turning, changing, you know, seeing where the chips fall out, it's a really exciting time to be on this side of the biz. So
for sure.
Also, if you have any questions at all, we'll be watching the chat. So please feel free to just drop questions, comments, hearts, hugs in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to them.
Yeah, we definitely want this to be interactive. So, you know, feel free to like
good morning,
place any questions in the chat. There's too many people for us to, unfortunately, let it open to everybody, but any questions that you have, reach out in the chat and we will definitely, you know, be looking at that.
So Cris, do you want to kick us off? Because I don't know, but how did this job come about? You know, did you just see it? Did you apply? You know, what was the interview process?
Yeah, I would love to tell you, and I can't wait to hear about yours either, because I don't know how that worked out for you either. You know, gosh, I was unemployed from March to like late September, early October of 2020. My restaurant never reopened. Still to this day, it is never reopening. And I thought that it was going to reopen. And so for many months, I was just kind of like enjoying the time off, honestly. It sucked, but I was enjoying other things in life. And then as we got kind of closer to September, October, I realized like, this is not sustainable. So I started looking. I started kind of, you know, looking for what's out there. It was still so unknown, at least in my city, as to what was going to happen. I did see this job, and when I saw it, I really felt like it was it was almost like they had written it for me, because it was an educator. So it wasn't a, oh my God, Kate Gerwin. Mwah. Hi. It wasn't a sales job. It was an educator. So for me, it was perfect, you know, and I applied. I went through many interviews, like 5. And they were Zoom interviews. So they were like, you know, hour long each, but I knew it was a perfect fit for me. And I got the job. It was awesome. And I'm very happy.
I feel like it's such a, like, you know, like a sense of relief, you know, I think, especially when you know something's right in your heart, for it to actually come through to fruition. I right before shutdown, I was the general manager at Existing Conditions, just a cocktail bar that was newish in New York, owned by Donnelly and Dave Arnold. And it's wild, but I was only there for 6 months, and then shutdown happened. And, you know, same thing, New York got hit really hard. Things were really weird for the first couple months. And then the protests, you know, started happening in the city. And it was just, you know, I feel like everyone had slightly different quarantine experiences, and mine was definitely a roller coaster. It was like up and down and up and down. And so Existing actually opened for a couple months in the summer. And that again was really weird, because we were doing to go, but then again, there were people protesting, and the sort of to go cocktail rules were very difficult in New York. They kind of made small businesses run through a million different hoops. And unfortunately, Existing Conditions closed, you know, which we were all pretty heartbroken by. Took, you know, another month, I guess not off, I was unemployed. And then over the winter, I got hired by Dante to help run their partnership programs. So I wasn't bartending in their restaurants, but I was essentially capping. They had a partnership with the Jean-Georges restaurants, and selling all their bottled cocktails. So I was making giant batches of Negronis all winter long in New York and then in Aspen. And, I think for me, I've I never thought I wanted to be a brand ambassador. I loved working, in bars and running bars. And, I think over the last year, it felt like working in bars, like it was being drug along by a horse in a carriage instead of driving the carriage. And was definitely at a crossroads, like what am I going to do? What's my next move? What is it that I love? And it was actually Colin Appia who texted me and said, hey, this job is available. Are you interested? And to be honest, it was just like a gut reaction. I feel like I worked with a lot of spirits, not just rum. There's certainly many other sort of rum aficionados out there who have been more involved in the scene. But I also felt like I could use my time and my connections as a bartender to really make an impact in a great way. I think it's a really exciting time for rum. There's many great conversations happening. And so I just said, you know what, fine, let's go for it. And I had a similar thing. It was like many interviews. There was HR interviews, several different rounds. They were all on Zoom, so a little more awkward, being drilled through your camera. Yeah. My last interview was with 6 people, and it was like the global VP of Bacardi and the North American VP of Bacardi, and and all this kind of stuff. And Bacardi is still a family-owned company too, so it's the family has sway in it. There's many, ultimately they have to like who you are. And so I would say when I was applying, I still was unsure of whether or not this was something that I really wanted to do. So what I did was I was just really honest. I think when you're going into a job interview, especially about rum, and you start talking about like, well, there've been really great conversations about appropriation and slavery in this category. That's not exactly like a bullseye interview question, but it was the truth. It was the truth about why I was excited about this job. And so I think if there's anybody considering a brand job, it's like, just like Cris was saying, you're representing it. So it has to feel genuine, as much as if you want to be a brand ambassador, I would just say, wait for the right job if you can, because I think it's almost like if you're a bar manager, you kind of have to, the best advice I ever got hiring people is wait for the right person to walk in the door. Don't just hire the first person who applies. And I think it's almost similar for a brand ambassador job, because it's very much what you make of it. I'm very close. Yeah. Like I'm very close with the guy, Juan Coronado, who was in my job for 11 years. And we're also very different people. And so that was definitely an insecurity or a conversation I had in my head, was like, can I even do this? Am I right for this? And I think ultimately, you just have to be honest. And so I think
it definitely has to be something that you're passionate about. Like, obviously everybody that's on this call could represent some brand, but it has to be something that you truly love and you truly are passionate about, and that you can honestly talk about that you love. And I'm in a different kind of position because I have a huge portfolio. So I'm not necessarily a brand ambassador. I'm a brand educator. So I have this huge portfolio of, more than 70 brands. I mean, I focus on probably 15 or 20, but I have a lot. And for me, it has been a lot of fun because I've been able to really educate on all of those things. Not just the brands and the history and the story, but because of my background, I'm able to talk to accounts or restaurants, bars, about how to use them and how to make cocktails in them, with them. I am amazed, and you guys who were caps will appreciate this. I'm amazed at how many people have no concept of how to batch a cocktail. They just think it's like, times 50. There's so much more to it. So my CAP background has been really beneficial because I've been able to really show bartenders how to batch, whether it's the entire cocktail or spirits. And that has been really beneficial, especially in COVID land, because, like nobody has staff. It's freaking crazy. Like I have like 30 accounts that I really focus on. Those are my like 30 that are like my focus, but I'm the educator for the whole state. So like I can go anywhere that I'm needed. And I'm amazed at how many people, how many places have like no staff, or the staff they do have are brand new. They're young bartenders. These are kids who like went to bartending school and they have no idea what they're doing. And so my CAP background has been really helpful with that, to kind of help them like understand how to make things on a large scale and batch things, whether again,
actually
little bit,
like make it happen.
Yeah. Because they have no people. Like it's crazy. And so anything that we can do to help them at this point has been a huge focus of my job.
Yeah. I feel like that's been like the really rewarding thing, I think, is just finding what new and creative ways we can actually be there to support the industry from the other side. Mm-hmm. We've got a couple questions, so I'm gonna shout them out. So Levi asked, when do you think you're ready for an ambassadorship, or even if it's a good idea for somebody? And that's a great question, Levi, because I think knowing when you're ready is really, you have to understand what all encompasses the job, and the other thing to sort of note is that every brand ambassador job and every company is going to be slightly different. So when thinking about if you're ready, or if it's something that you're wanting to do, if it's the right fit, I would really think about, take stock of what are your strengths and weaknesses, take stock of, what your lifestyle is, like what's important to you. Do you want to stay home? Do you want to stay in your market? You should go for a local job. Do you want to travel? Do you want to work more on the educating side of things? Do you want to work more on the marketing side of things? And I would just say, really do your research, because I think ambassador jobs definitely get glamorized. It's sort of like, oh, I've got a credit card and I'm going out to bars all the time and we just party and have fun, which is, maybe what goes up on Instagram, but there's a lot involved to it, and it's really relationship building. I think it's being tactical, it's being disciplined, it's answering emails, it's being organized.
Yeah. There's a lot of meetings, and like I literally sat on a meeting today for an hour and I was thinking about all of you guys, and it was all about numbers, and it was Excel spreadsheets and numbers and sales and all these kinds of like crazy things. And I was thinking like, this is so much different than anything any of us ever did as a bartender, right?
I work, so my job in particular, on paper, I answer to the brand team, which would be the marketing team. But because I'm in advocacy, I also split to Adrian Biggs, who's the head of advocacy for North America. So a lot of what I'm doing, and probably a lot of other brands out there too, is connecting the brand team who are not bartenders at all. They're people that went to marketing school in college, who are trying to sell rum. And it's, especially if you come from a niche cocktail side of things, we're what they call the 1%ers, right? But there's millions and millions and millions of people and brands and bars and venues that, are outside of what, we think is the best cocktail bar ever, and the reality is they're just as important, as well. There's, so it's very humbling, I think. So yeah, I guess that would be my advice.
Yeah, I don't know that there's any time like, that you're ready. I mean, I knew I was ready for a while. I mean, I love bartending and I miss it every single day, but I was ready. I was ready for that next chapter. And I think it all happened the way it was supposed to happen for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't think I was ready, but here I am, and I'm really loving it. So I think, I know that's not a very tangible answer, but just kind of has to feel right. Yeah. We have another question. Any advice for someone new to being a brand ambassador and representing a small, unestablished brand? Yeah, I mean, I guess, so both of us obviously work for giant companies, but I think, from what I can kind of gather, I think the main difference from working for a giant brand versus a small brand is going to be, maybe the tools that you have accessible.
Yeah.
But ultimately the job is the same. You're establishing relationships. It's being present. I think no matter what industry you work in, no matter what job you work in, people always want to work with somebody that they want to work with. So being communicative, being empathetic to what you're walking into. And I think also knowing that just because we want to sell our brand, we have to be understanding of other bars. And so, kind of being flexible, how I walk into a bar like PDT and try to educate and advocate for my brands versus how I walk into Olive Garden and Times Square is very different, so if you're a small unestablished brand, you're probably working with a more niche set of groups, but that of venues, I guess, but that doesn't mean that, they're all one and the same. So I would say, just, being very open and being very flexible, because I know as a bartender, I used to hate it when I felt like brand ambassadors would come in and try to push their agenda on me.
Right.
And it wasn't even that I didn't want to work with them, but there's always a million things happening.
I think it's being like, I think a big part of it is the story behind the brand. I mean, whether it's a huge brand like Johnny Walker or like a local little brand, I mean, it's the story, right? Like, it's, why should I choose your brand versus mine or yours? Or, there's so many different brands. And so I think that that's the most important thing, is the story, knowing your stuff and really believing it, and walking into these accounts and giving them a reason for why they should buy your bourbon or your gin or whatever the case may be. For me, I work with iconic brands, but there's a million choices. There's a lot of different choices. So you have to believe in it. You have to let them taste it. And I think that's the biggest part. If you believe in it, then it'll shine through when you talk about it.
And I also feel like a no isn't necessarily mean a no forever. So, I think that's something that we forget about is, if somebody's like, hey, not right now, I don't want to buy or I don't want to take on your whiskey. Sometimes it'll be people, and everybody's busy, but, brand ambassadors be like, okay, fine, screw that bar then, but, again, it's just always being hospitable in every aspect of what you do. And that's something I think if you do come from a bar background, totally translates to this work, is just communicating.
That's been a hard thing for me too, because, you walk into a bar or restaurant and you like pitch your spirit and they're like, no, I don't want it. And it's hard not to feel defeated. Right. So like, one thing that I've talked to a lot of people who've done this a lot longer than I have, and they all say the same thing. It's all about building that relationship. So you just continue to build that relationship, whether it's just a friendship or, you go in and you spend money in their restaurant, whatever the case may be, eventually that happens. And so I think a big part of the brand ambassador side of this is that you have to work for it. Some of them are really easy. Some of them you walk in, they want to do stuff with you. They want to put your stuff on their menu. Others, they want nothing to do with you. And it's hard because we come from the side of hospitality where like people want to come to our bar and that's why they're sitting there, and we make them a drink and they love it and it's exciting and everybody has a great time and then they leave. And this is definitely different, but it's been, for me, it's been really fun and very rewarding. Very,
100%.
very hard work.
Yeah.
I'm busy in a different way than I've ever been before, but it's definitely rewarding, and the benefits like are wonderful. I feel very blessed.
Yeah. I feel like, you know, I get, so I've only been in my job for about 4 months. So I still get the question like, how are you liking it? And, I guess because there's so many different angles and sides to the job, it almost feels like I'm freelancing, but just for like one person, you know, like I'm working on project after project. So I would say my work is very project based. But I see a couple other questions. What if you are from another country, but would like to try out? What are the technical requirements like working visa? I think if you're trying to come across on a visa, my best advice would be to go with a larger brand, because they'll need to pick up your visa. And it depends on which kind. A lot of times I think, so my boyfriend is from Scotland, so I've kind of been through the visa thing with him. And generally you just need credentials about why this brand or why they're picking you up. So anything that you have, if you had some cocktails in a newspaper, if you've participated in any competitions, all that kind of stuff, just try to consolidate it, because that would be your best bet for getting a working visa. And then being an ambassador is like being a key account manager of a certain label. It can be in any country. And greetings, Guatemala, Pablo. I know that the US in particular is a very different market than everywhere else.
Yeah.
In the US particularly, it is illegal. So pay to play is illegal. So say in London, Diageo can say, hey, Connaught cocktail bar, we want to buy your cocktail menu. So
right.
here's 100,000 pounds and use our spirits in all of your, as all of your base spirits. In the US, that's illegal. So you have what's called a 3-tier system. So there's the brand and the importers, and then that feeds to the distributors, and then the distributors feed to the venues. So we have people on our sales team that's specifically what they're there for, is they're there to deal with the numbers. And they do have activation budgets, and they can sort of work with different venues, maybe to throw a happy hour or something like that. But I think most ambassadors, because you're on advocacy, I think you legally or just generally don't deal with any kind of sales. So those are also definitely two specific jobs.
And in the US, there's also like every state has its own liquor laws. So like I'm in a control state, which is completely different from other states. So I think it depends on the state that you are in as well.
So that's kind of a layered question, but please feel free, if you want to talk about it more, to email either one of us, and we could go into more specifics.
Yeah. I'll make sure to put my email address in the chat, so that you guys can all, I mean, if you're a cap, then you know how to reach out to me anyway, but definitely I want everybody to feel free to reach out to me. There's another message.
Go for
it. Another chat here from Rhiannon. Hello, Rhiannon. I miss you. About if our jobs are full-time or permanent and can you talk about the difference between contract gigs? So I can definitely talk about that, because I did that for many years while I was bartending. I was, bartending full-time, but I I worked for Pisco Portone for about a year. Some of you guys probably remember that. I worked for Charles Joly for Craft House Cocktails for a while. I worked for Cooper Spirits back in the Slow and Low Illegal days. And I was doing those like part-time gigs while I was still bartending. So I was able to do both. And those came with no benefits. It was kind of like a, weekly or biweekly or monthly salary. And I was much more on an ambassador kind of like go out to restaurants, bars, showcase your products. This is a very big girl job. This is like, salary, bonuses, benefits. It's unlike anything I've ever experienced, truly, because I really have been a bartender my entire life. There are a lot of rules and laws, and, I had to get them to approve me even doing this, because I work for a very big company. However, with that, again, I've got the benefits and all the perks and the, expense account and all those things. It has been wonderful for me. And, I wouldn't trade it. Let's see. Rhiannon says, did you experience something? She asks, so Rhiannon is asking, and you guys can probably see this in your chat, if my part-time gigs helped. Yeah, I think absolutely, because, I think my CAP experience helped. I think Bar 5 Day helped. I think the part-time gigs helped, to be in the role that I'm in with over 70 brands that I have to be able to speak to all the time. There's an expectation, definitely. I probably talk about 8 or 10 of them all the time, but I need to know all the dates and all the things of the history and the stories of all 8 to 10 of those brands. And then the other ones I need to know also. And so there's been a lot of studying over the last almost year now. I rarely just sit around and, shoot the shit and watch TV. I'm like in my book, like reading and studying, because if you guys know me, you also know that I'm like an overachiever and I want to make sure that I know like everything. So it's been very good for me. I feel very blessed that I got this, and I think I'm doing a pretty good job. I think so.
I would bet that you are, Diageo Dehlavi. Yeah, I think if you can, definitely doing some part-time work, or if brands are ever doing event work, even if they're throwing a happy hour, it's great to attend one, because like any job, networking is huge, right? So the more people you sort of know with the company, the more I think you can also kind of speak to people about, like we were saying earlier, every company and every brand is different. So you can kind of get a sense of, what direction the brand is going in, how you could potentially fit into that. So I think it's sort of like feeling out the waters. I think I saw a comment, testing out the waters as to like where you might fit in, and what you could gain and add. I also think, too, there used to be more, I think that's like maybe a big change, going back to Rhiannon's earlier question. There used to be more part-time ambassadors, and I think companies are sort of moving away from that, more towards full-time ambassadors. One, just because like with everybody, as much as these brands are giant and huge, the bigger you are, the harder you fall. And this was also a very hard year on I would say, companies, especially for the smaller niche brands who maybe the majority of their business was in cocktail bars that were closed. So I think a lot of those part-time brand jobs are gone. So I would say if you're looking to or thinking about ambassador work, definitely attend events. just to kind of get a feel of the individual brands. And I think something that's really important to remember is, you know, my biggest takeaway working with the company is that there is a huge divide between the people. I would say 90% of the people that work on brands and the cocktail bar industry, because 90% of the people that work in the office and brands have no idea what, you know, like, what the word bricks is. You know, I said the word bricks the other day and they were like, what? You know, or we had
like a building. They don't even
yeah.
About.
Or we had an hour-long conversation about the word smooth, you know, because like, you know, a lot of times these brands have huge amounts of like data and insights. And I think what has been very valuable for me is, you know, as a bartender, when you're dealing with a guest that doesn't know that much about cocktails, and obviously there's huge you know, you're almost sort of having to have all these repetitive conversations about misconceptions about spirits and cocktails and all this kind of stuff, right? And so you're having to bridge that gap just to get somebody to order a drink. Well, that's what brands are doing too, but just you know, on a large scale. So that's really the role, I think, of an ambassador, is to bridge that gap between the companies and the bartenders and also the consumers. And I think the more experience that you have communicating those differences, the more helpful you are to be a bridge between all of those spaces. You know, because ultimately everybody wants the same thing. Everybody wants to sell their product, use their product, and have a great time, right? And so, you know, finding those ways to make that easier is huge. So I would say there's no way that I could do this job or could do it well if I didn't have a good amount of experience in the bar world. And also keeping in mind the bigger picture. You know, ultimately it is a business. So having a little bit of business mindedness to you, I think can help.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So we've got a new question. Can you recommend any come to market strategies for launching a product into a new market? I mean, you know, anytime you've got a new product in a new market, for me, again, it goes back to education. It goes back to making sure that the people who are representing it know everything that there is to know about it. So, you know, whether that's mash bill, if you're talking about, you know, bourbon or botanicals in gin, or, you know, the aging, all the things. Like, I feel like I've been around some brands that leave this mystery, and that's not good. You know, we don't want the mystery, like, especially when you get with nerds like all of us who want to know all the things.
Transparency is key.
Yeah. And like, trust me, I've been in educations before where people don't know anything about gin at all. And I could tell them that it has anything in it and they would never know the difference. And then I was in an education one day where this kid, I had poured tastings in little plastic cups, and this kid brought his own Glencairn glasses and literally poured my plastic cups into his own glassware. And I was like, oh shit, here we go. You know, I mean, you get those people, right? And they're like, oh, I know so much. And I think that's a big thing, is being transparent and like really knowing your product, believing in your product, and then having that hospitality behind it. I can't speak enough to the hospitality piece. I know that a good amount of people on this Zoom right now have this tattoo, and you know, and that's important.
And not me if you don't, but I'm still part of the club. So
you don't, and neither does Trevor, but you would if you did, you know, and I bet you a bunch of people have this thing right here too. But you know, it's important. Thanks, Sean. Sean and I go way, way back. Sean was a cap in like, God, I don't even know. 10?
This is a very 11? Insecure thing to be carrying around.
Sean, when were you a cap? 2011?
11.
We go way, way, way back, man.
Yeah. This is back when we were all wearing white coats and didn't deserve it.
Everybody was wearing a white coat back then. Yeah.
I also feel like, to Jen, like just to add to what Cris is saying, because she's 100% right. It's like, it's knowing your product, being behind your product, and again, also being strategic, because knowing like where does your product fit. Before I started this job, I used to do some sort of like, I guess you could say consulting sounds very strong. It wasn't consulting. I would answer like interviews for a company called Barfly. And Barfly would kind of contact bartenders, and we would have maybe like an hour-long Zoom question, and they would be like, hypothetically, if, you know, this brand were to launch, what do you think about the liquid and the bottle and that kind of a thing? And I think that for new brands, there's, what I would always say is there's a couple major things. One, what's the price? Is this going in a cocktail where you're going to move volume, or is this going on the back bar? Two, what does the bottle look like? Is that bottle going in a well? Can it fit a speed pour? Or is that bottle, again, going on the back bar? Who, you know, how flexible, like, is your product? Does it work in a lot of cocktails, or is it very niche? Does it have a very, I mean, maybe that's more so with things like gin, but, you know, does it have a very niche flavor profile? As a bartender, you can add drink strategies, right? So, you know, I would say you never want to go into a bar and say, this is how you use my product. But if depending on, you know, what, you know, depending on what you're selling, there's always like, hey, this gin is great in everything, but it makes a wicked martini. And, you know, and that's sort of how you pitch it. And I think all of those things combined really tell, are you aiming for craft cocktail bartenders? Are you aiming for dive bars? Are you aiming for, you know, neighborhood cocktail bars? Or are you aiming for consumers? I just did a tasting on, this gin that was good, but it was very like one-sided, and the packaging was very like masculine, and it was in this like black bottle. And I was like, okay, like,
yeah. And I think that you have to like have cocktails for all those things, right? Like, you have to have the mule that's like, you know, 2 touches, takes no effort. Anybody can do it. You have to have the fancy stuff, and you have to be open to all of those things. That's one thing that I understand, but I know that I've worked with other people who that's been really hard. They've come from a really high-end craft cocktail background, and they get, you know, a volume account where like
it's a whole new world. Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, you know, one of the brands in my portfolio is Smirnoff. Like there's this very specific niche of like who's pouring Smirnoff, right? And it's volume bars. They're not doing like fancy mixology, and that's fine. So I think you're right, AK, like especially if you're introducing a new brand to a new market, you have to understand that there's like all the different accounts from like dive bar to high-end fancy craft cocktail. And you have to be able to have cocktails that work in all of those different styles with all the different price points.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, again, even though I work for this giant brand, Bacardi, what we're dealing with right now is, or what we're working on is our premium range. And it's almost like we're introducing a whole new like category of spirits. Like it almost feels like, you know, probably what Phil Ward was doing with Mezcal like 20 years ago, because I think the category of aged sipping rums is just like not a thing yet. Even if you work in cocktail bars and you're like, of course, why doesn't everybody do, you know, rum old fashions or shots of rum or rum neat? Like people just don't. People just don't. But we have these amazing products, and so you know, we've got right now Bacardi Cuatro Ocho Diez is our like core premium range. We also have a bottle called Reserva Limitada, which is like a blend of blends. And then we have a 16-year-old rum, you know, so, and this is the same company that has Bacardi coconut.
Right.
Which is actually, I'm going to say this here. I keep getting in trouble for saying this. It is surprisingly delicious. When I got started, they sent me like the whole range, right? Like, okay. And, you know, Aiden and I sat down in our kitchen and we were like, all right, let's do this, you know, and trying all the flavors, and like, they're really good. They're really good. I
do the same thing with some of my brands. Like, I'm like, obviously like Johnny Walker Blue is amazing, but then, you know, you taste something like Crown Royal Caramel and it's actually good without.
It's actually, yeah, it's really good. Yeah. But yeah, you know, so I think that's been interesting, you know, speaking with the marketing people, and then also speaking to bartenders, because ultimately like bars have to make money, you know, and if you're introducing a new spirit, like a aged rum, it's like, you know, why should this cocktail bar pick up this bottle that consumers aren't necessarily going to like ask for, you know, because then that's product that they're spending money on that's sitting on their shelf, you know. So that's kind of, even though obviously I work for a big brand, I think that was Jen that asked that question. I feel like I'm dealing with some of the things of launching a new small product almost, because it's like you're constantly having to convince, it's like coming at it from both sides. It's trying to get bartenders to stock it so that guests will order it, and getting guests to order it so that bartenders will stock it, you know. So that's sort of the challenge. But again, I think we've said it over and over: being hospitable, being flexible, being open-minded, really knowing your product inside and out, and not getting too defeated when someone says no.
Absolutely.
You know, because you just ultimately, ambassador work or education work, it's just boots on the ground, like getting out on the street and being present. And the more present you are, I think the better it is for what you're trying to achieve.
So Richie has a question for us. He says, do you have any mantra or routine when starting your day and getting ready to visit your accounts? I'll speak first. I get up every day and work out first thing. That's just me. That is kind of a newish thing in the last couple of years. So for those of you who've known me for a long time, like that wasn't a thing before, but that's what I do first thing every single day. I get up, I drink some coffee, and I work out. And for me, that sets the tone of my day. But in regards to work, I just keep a good list of, I'm just really organized, and I keep a really good list of like my accounts, who I need to visit, when I need to visit them. Again, I have like 25-ish that I like focus on. And then I'm also able to go around the state. So if I'm asked to go around the state, I do. I was out of town a couple weeks ago, you know, specifically for like an ask, but otherwise I just keep a really good list, and I try to visit as many as I can, you know, throughout the week, and over and over and over. I think it's about being organized as much as you possibly can. And I do a lot of like on my phone, calendar invite type stuff, so that it's right in my calendar. Like if I'm going to have lunch with you, I'm going to send you an invite and you're going to accept it. And then it's in my calendar. But at the same token, I also have like an old school calendar on my wall, and I write everything down. And for me, that works. Don Lee would laugh at me because he used to laugh at me for writing anything down because he was such a tech guy. But like, for me,
it's like finding whatever works for you.
Yeah,
kind of.
For me, I've got like the invite, the calendar on the phone, the calendar on the wall, this, like whatever it is, but that's how I do it.
Yeah. I think I've never had to work from home before. And so for me, it was setting up like a space. So I've got like a little TV dinner tray and like a director's chair that like folds out. And I have like a spot that I sit in, and people in the office are laughing at me because I move it around sometimes because I still haven't figured out. I'm like I've always been difficult with routine. I thrive on a little bit of chaos and a lot of projects. And so I'm still trying to figure out where it is, but at least that little like desk, it's like when I sit down, now I'm in my zone. I'm also terrible with like having things on my phone. So yeah, like I'm with you, Chris, like Dawn would laugh at me, but I have like a notebook that I just write everything down, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. But I've always been very organized in my head.
Me too.
And so I've never written things down or had calendars, but now it's to the point that, you know, I have to have a calendar. And I have to, you know, there's so many little projects, and to be really efficient, you know, making sure that, are you visiting accounts? When was the last time you were there? Who did you speak to? Following up with emails, all that kind of things. That, you know, so I've had to figure out how to be really, really organized. And I think writing things down and having it online, whether it's some sort of calendar, that helps to also communicate what you're dealing with other people. You know, because it's not just, if it were just me trying to remember my stuff, I could figure it out, but I have to not just know what I'm doing, but also being able to communicate that to my bosses and my teammates. All right, we've got a couple last questions. Trevor, hi Trevor. What's the skill you wished you had learned before you made the jump to BA?
Trevor, you know, Excel, which you and Dawn taught me, but I'm still learning, and it's still a thing. And literally my boss sent me this file that was so big, it took like forever, literally like half an hour to get into my computer yesterday. And I was like, fuck, if Trevor could see this thing, like, it's amazing. I did learn some hacks from you, so that's great, but Excel.
Yeah, I would say Excel, some kind of spreadsheet. I think just being like, I've never had to organize my inbox before. So I guess it's just being, just finding different ways to being organized. You definitely have to be more of a morning person. I know, again, we think of brand ambassadors as going out and partying all night long at cocktail bars, but actually it's very much a daytime.
I'm like 7.
Very much a daytime job. Every day. If you can figure out a good morning routine, that's the one. And also I think just figuring out what, you know, and this is different for everybody, but figuring out what your tolerance levels are. I think everybody's at different places with that. I never used to go out that much, so I never really had to say no to more drinks, if that makes sense. You know, like I would bartend and then go home. And if I was out, I could do whatever, you know, I could just kind of
I don't think you could do this job and be somebody that goes hard every night. I don't think that you could stay in this job. I think you would get fired. I mean, you know, bottom line is, like, even when I'm hosting a happy hour or a dinner or whatever, I'm still working. So, you know, I think that that's definitely something people have to think about is, you know, you're always on stage, you're always representing the brands. And, you know, I mean, we talked about that in CAP day 1, right? Like, if you're a bartender, same thing. So I think that's a big part of it, but I agree, you know, you have to like know your limits.
Social media. I don't know how to, I'm the worst. I don't know. I don't know how to do all the stuff. So I need like we have like a 24-year-old portfolio, someone who works on the brand team. And she's like, no, AK, you just have to like do this, and this. Fanny taught me how to save boomerangs. I didn't know you could do that. Anyways, that's silly stuff.
We have one last question, then we've got to wrap this up. And this is from Ariel asking if you handle all of the work with your accounts, or do you have more people that you manage that work under you? I personally, speaking for myself, I don't have anybody that works underneath me. My job is very like self-managed in the sense that I write my own schedule. I mean, as long as I get my stuff done, like I have goals and things that I have to achieve quarterly, monthly, weekly, etc. Nobody works under me. I have people who work with me from the distributor broker side, and I work kind of side by side with them. But in my role, I'm almost like self-employed in that respect. Like I have certain goals that I have to achieve, and it is up to me to make that happen.
I think that would be true. I feel like that's true for any brand ambassador job, is even if you do have people that work under you or people that manage certain aspects of your job, it's very much a self-starting, it's self-motivational job. I guess going back to like, I just thought of it, but like Trevor's question too, it's like, if this is something that you're looking for, we did like a improv comedy class once, and that was great because it teaches you how to listen to people. How to listen and respond and public speaking. Not that everyone has to learn how to be funny, but just more it's improv comedy, I think, is a lesson in communication, and also like salesmanship. You know, people, whether you're educating or selling, it's learning how to talk about and relay what you're trying to say to your audience. So I think those two things,
being boring, you know?
Yeah. All of it's very self-starting. Word we get is KPIs, key performance indicators. So for example, my job actually does not have one because have such a big market. And there's pros and cons to that. On one hand, there's I'm not totally responsible for certain things. And if I don't hit them, then it's okay. But on the other hand, there's no structure. So I have to really create my own structure.
And for me, it's exact opposite. Like I have very specific KPIs. We are almost at the end of this quarter. So, how many days, like 10 days or whatever. And so I'm like super hyper focused right now on making sure that I hit all of those, because if I hit all of them, I get a bonus. And, that's something I've never experienced before. I mean, for me, my bonus was every night working really hard to get those tips. So it's definitely a different world. But I think for me, it's just the evolution of me and the way it was supposed to go. So I think we're a little bit over, and I really want to just thank you guys all for coming on, and I miss all of your faces. It's so wonderful to see everybody. You guys know how to get in touch with me. If you need anything, if you want to just hang out and talk, I would love that. That would be wonderful. And I'm happy to help out in any way. And I see Justine, finally. Hello, love.
It's really late here.
It is. Was your is it around midnight?
1.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bed, but I'm glad I got to see your faces.
We love you and we miss you.
Same.
Thank you guys very much, everybody.
Thank you so much. Can't wait to see you all at Tails next year, definitely, but hopefully before then.
AK, thank you.
Thanks, Chris. You're the best.